From the deserts of North Africa to the frozen steppes of Russia, 5 artillery weapons changed the course of World War II. These weren't just guns, they were instruments of terror that could obliterate tanks at 3 kilometers, rain down hellfire from the sky, and punch through 8 feet of solid concrete. Today, we reveal the most devastating heavy weapons ever deployed in combat. Number 5 on our countdown takes us to 1939 and the weapon that would become the most feared gun of the entire war, the German 88mm Flak Gun. Originally designed as an anti-aircraft weapon, the 88, as Allied soldiers called it, would evolve into something far deadlier. Developed in the 1930s by Krupp, this multipurpose gun stood 8 feet tall and weighed over 5 tons. Its official designation was the 8.8cm Flak 18-36-37-41, but to German crews, it was simply the Act. The gun's technical specifications were revolutionary for its time. It fired a 20-pound shell at a muzzle velocity of 2,690 feet per second, giving it an effective anti-aircraft ceiling of 26,000 feet and a maximum ceiling of 32,000 feet. But what truly made the 88 legendary was its devastating effectiveness against tanks. When General Rommel first deployed these weapons in North Africa against British armor, Allied tank crews were stunned to find themselves being destroyed at ranges exceeding 2,000 meters, far beyond the reach of their own guns. The 88's anti-tank capability came from its standard armor-piercing round, the 10.2 kilogram Karl-Gerät 39. This projectile could penetrate 105 millimeters of 30-degree sloped armor at 1,000 meters, making it lethal against virtually every Allied tank in service during the early war years. The gun operated with a crew of 10 men commanded by a gun leader, and its semi-automatic sliding wedge breech allowed for a rapid fire rate of 15 to 20 rounds per minute. What made the 88 particularly terrifying was its accuracy. When coupled with advanced optics, a skilled gunner had approximately a 19% chance of hitting a tank at 3,000 meters with each shot. In combat situations, this translated to near certain destruction within a few volleys. The gun's high velocity also meant shells arrived almost instantaneously at medium ranges, giving targets virtually no time to react. Throughout the North African, Italian, and European campaigns, the distinctive crack of an 88 firing became a sound that sent Allied tank crews scrambling for cover. By war's end, tens of thousands of Allied aircraft and thousands of tanks had fallen victim to this formidable weapon, cementing its reputation as one of the most versatile and deadly artillery pieces ever created. Number 4 brings us to 1941 and a weapon that would earn one of the most ominous nicknames of the war, Stalin's organ. The Soviet BM-13 Katyusha rocket launcher represented a completely different philosophy of artillery warfare. While conventional guns fired single shells with precision, the Katyusha unleashed devastating area bombardment that could blanket entire sections of the battlefield in fire and steel within seconds. The system consisted of 16 to 48 launch rails mounted on the bed of ordinary utility trucks, typically the American-built Studebaker or Soviet SIS-6. Each M13 rocket measured just over 5 feet in length, weighed 93 pounds, and carried an 11-pound high-explosive warhead. What the individual rockets lacked in payload, they made up for in sheer volume of fire. A single BM-13 launcher could fire its entire complement of 16 rockets in just 7 to 10 seconds, and 4 such vehicles could deliver firepower equivalent to 75 conventional field guns onto a 1.5 square mile area in less than 30 seconds. The Germans who first encountered Katyusha fire near Orsha in July 1941 called it Stalin's organ because of the distinctive howling shriek the rockets made in flight. This psychological effect was almost as devastating as the physical destruction. The sound of dozens of rockets screaming through the air, followed by thunderous impacts across a wide area, induced genuine terror among Axis troops. Finnish forces called them Stalinurit, and Hungarian soldiers knew them as Slinargona. All shared the same dread of their approach. The Katyusha's effective range with the M13 rocket was 8,740 meters, or just over 5 miles. While individual rockets were highly inaccurate compared to conventional artillery, this mattered little when saturating an area target. The system was designed for rapid fire, quick displacement, and maximum shock effect. Crews could reload and be ready to fire again within 5 to 15 minutes, depending on the model and experience of the crew. Initially classified as a state secret, only specially cleared NKVD police units were permitted to operate early Katyushas. Crews had orders to destroy their launchers rather than allow capture. The first mass deployment came during the December 1941 Soviet counteroffensive at Moscow, where 300 BM, 13 launchers participated. German forces, already battered by the winter cold and Soviet resistance, had never encountered such concentrated firepower. The psychological impact was immense. Production was continuously rationalized throughout the war for easier manufacture. And by war's end, the Katyusha had become one of the Soviet Union's most effective weapons, cheap to produce, devastating in effect, and utterly terrifying to those on the receiving end. Taking the number 3 position is the American M1 155mm gun, better known by its legendary nickname Long Tom. First deployed in combat on Christmas Eve 1942 during the North African Campaign by a battery of the 36th Field Artillery Regiment, this weapon would become the backbone of American long-range counter-battery fire throughout the war. The Long Tom represented American industrial might translated into artillery form. Development began in the interwar period following recommendations from the Westervelt Board, a commission that studied artillery lessons from World War I. Engineers spent years perfecting the design, particularly struggling with the optimal carriage system for the massive barrel. The final design mounted the gun on an 8-wheeled carriage that could be towed at reasonable speeds while maintaining stability during firing. The gun's specifications were impressive by any standard. It could fire a 100-pound high-explosive shell to a maximum range of 14 miles, 23 kilometers, with enough accuracy to engage enemy artillery batteries well beyond their ability to return fire. This range advantage made the Long Tom ideal for counter-battery work, systematically destroying enemy gun positions before they could effectively engage Allied forces. The barrel had an estimated accuracy life of 1,500 rounds, after which were degraded its precision. Operating the Long Tom required a well-trained crew of 14 men. The weapon weighed approximately 14 tons in firing position, requiring careful sight selection and preparation. Once placed, however, it could maintain a sustained rate of fire of 30 rounds per hour or 40 rounds per hour for shorter periods. Its maximum rate of fire could reach 2 rounds per minute for brief periods when rapid engagement was necessary. The Long Tom saw service in every major American campaign of World War II, North Africa, Italy, Normandy, and across Northwest Europe into Germany itself. During the Battle of Normandy, Long Tom batteries provided critical long-range support, engaging German artillery positions, command posts, and communication centers far behind enemy lines. The psychological effect on German forces was significant. They quickly learned that American artillery could reach targets they considered safe from conventional field guns. By war's end, 33 U.S. field artillery battalions were equipped with Long Toms, and the gun had earned a reputation for devastating effectiveness and mechanical reliability. After the war, it was modernized as the M4 variant and mounted on self-propelled chassis as the M40, seeing service in Korea and being exported to numerous Allied nations including Denmark, Greece, Japan, Italy, and Austria. The Long Tom proved that American artillery could match or exceed any equivalent weapon in the world, combining impressive range with the industrial capacity to produce them in numbers that overwhelmed Axis forces. Number 2 takes us to the most massive self-propelled artillery piece ever built for mobile warfare, the German Karl-Gerät, or Karl device. First deployed in 1941, this behemoth 600mm siege mortar represented the absolute extreme of artillery engineering, a weapon so powerful it could punch through 8 feet of reinforced concrete with a single shell. Designed and built by Rheinmetall based on specifications issued in October 1936, the Karl-Gerät was purpose-built for destroying the most heavily fortified positions in existence. The weapon measured over 36 feet in length, stood nearly 16 feet tall, and weighed 124 tons in combat configuration. It crawled across terrain on massive tracks at a maximum speed of just 6 miles per hour, and required a crew of 19 men to operate the 040 variant, or 15 for the later 041 model. The Karl's main armament was a 60-centimeter caliber mortar with a barrel measuring 5.07 meters in length. Loading this monster required a massive sliding breech and specialized equipment. The mortar was housed in a large box-shaped structure containing 4 recoil cylinders that had to withstand braking pressure of approximately 680 tons with each shot. The heaviest ammunition was the schwer Betongranaat, the heavy concrete piercing shell. This projectile measured 2.51 meters in length and weighed 2.17 tons, with an explosive charge of 280 kilograms. When fired, it traveled at 220 meters per second and could penetrate 2.5 meters of reinforced concrete before detonating. The maximum range with this heavy shell was 4.32 kilometers. A lighter shell variant, the light Betongranaat, weighed 1.7 tons and extended the range to 6.44 kilometers. For even greater range, a 54-centimeter version firing a 1.25-ton shell could reach targets over 10 kilometers away, penetrating 3 to 3.5 meters of concrete. The psychological and physical impact of these shells was staggering. A 2-ton projectile arriving from the sky could demolish virtually any structure or fortification. The Karl-Gerät saw its most famous employment during the siege of Sevastopol in 1942. German forces faced massive Soviet concrete fortifications that conventional artillery could not penetrate. 6 Karl-Gerät mortars named Adam, Eve, Thor, Odin, Loki, and Zeus were deployed to reduce these defenses. Operating from carefully prepared positions, these weapons systematically demolished the Soviet forts. Each shot created an explosion visible for miles, and the psychological effect on defenders was devastating. The massive shells could collapse underground bunkers, bury defenders alive, and crack even the thickest concrete walls. Despite their effectiveness, only 7 Karl-Gerät units were ever built. Their extreme weight limited mobility. They required extensive logistical support, including specialized ammunition carriers, and they could only be transported long distances by rail. Each unit needed its own dedicated Panzer IV ammunition carrier to shuttle shells from supply points to the firing position. Nevertheless, the Karl-Gerät proved that when properly employed against the right targets, no fortification could withstand its tremendous destructive power. Taking our number 1 position is the weapon that earned a reputation as the most versatile field gun of World War II, the British QF 25-pounder. Introduced into service just before war began in 1939, this 87.6 mm gun howitzer combined durability, mobility, and effectiveness in ways no other artillery piece of its era could match. By war's end, over 12,000 had been manufactured, and it would remain the British Army's primary field artillery piece until the 1960s, with some units using them for training into the 1980s. The 25-pounder emerged from Britain's interwar effort to replace both the 18-pounder field gun and the 4.5-inch howitzer with a single weapon capable of fulfilling both direct fire and high-angle rolls. Named for its ability to fire a 25-pound 11.3-kilogram projectile, the gun represented a radical departure from previous British artillery design. Its most innovative feature was a circular firing platform attached directly to the gun. When aim-placed, the gun was pulled onto this platform, which transferred most recoil forces directly to the ground rather than through the trail spade. This made the weapon remarkably stable when firing and allowed the crew to rapidly traverse the gun in any direction using its road wheels. The 25-pounder used howitzer-type variable charge ammunition, giving it exceptional versatility. A shell could be fired with different powder charges, depending on the tactical situation: load charges for high-angle fire against targets behind cover, or maximum charges for long-range direct fire. Maximum range was approximately 12 kilometers, with standard ammunition. The gun fired with a quick firing system, meaning the brass cartridge case provided rapid loading compared to bag charges, and was automatically ejected when the breech opened. What truly distinguished the 25-pounder was its all-around capability. For anti-tank work, it could fire 20-pound solid armor-piercing shot, later upgraded to armor-piercing ballistic capped rounds. While not as powerful as dedicated anti-tank guns, desperate crews could and did engage enemy armor when necessary. The gun excelled at suppressive fire, neutralizing enemy positions rather than attempting their complete destruction. The British artillery control system was so efficient at directing 25-pounder fire that German soldiers in the 1944-45 Northwest Europe campaign believed the British had secretly deployed automatic 25-pounders. So rapid was the response to calls for fire support. The 25-pounder saw action in every theater where British and Commonwealth forces fought. In North Africa, batteries supported the 8th Army from the first battles against the Italians through El Alamein and the final victory in Tunisia. In Burma, they provided crucial fire support in jungle conditions. During D-Day and the Northwest Europe campaign, 25-pounder batteries advanced with the armies, providing constant fire support. The gun's reliability was legendary. It functioned in desert heat, tropical humidity, Arctic cold, and European mud without faltering. Perhaps most impressively, the 25-pounder was remarkably easy to operate. Its well-designed sights, smooth traverse mechanism, and ergonomic layout allowed crews to achieve and maintain high rates of fire 6 to 8 rounds per minute sustained, or up to 12 rounds per minute for brief periods. Combined with British artillery doctrine emphasizing coordinated battery and regimental fire, 25-pounder units could mass devastating firepower on target areas within minutes of receiving fire missions. This responsiveness, combined with the gun's inherent reliability and versatility, earned it recognition as possibly the finest field artillery piece of World War II, a weapon that served its crews and country with distinction in every campaign, under every condition, against every enemy. From the devastating accuracy of the German 88 to the psychological terror of Soviet Katyusha rockets, the long-reaching power of the American Long Tom, the fortress-crushing might of the Karl-Gerät, and the all-around versatility of the British 25-pounder, these 5 weapons represented the pinnacle of World War II artillery engineering. Each was a product of different military philosophies, different tactical requirements, and different industrial capabilities. Yet all shared one common trait: they changed the battlefield in fundamental ways, giving their operators decisive advantages and forcing their enemies to adapt or die. The 88 proved that a well-designed weapon could excel in multiple roles, becoming both the premier anti-aircraft gun and the most feared anti-tank weapon of the war. The Katyusha demonstrated that massed rocket fire could achieve effects far beyond its modest individual warhead size, pioneering a form of warfare that continues today. The Long Tom showed American commitment to superior range and the industrial capacity to deploy such weapons in overwhelming numbers. The Karl-Gerät represented the absolute limit of what was technically possible in siege artillery, a weapon so powerful that no fortification could withstand it. And the 25-pounder exemplified British pragmatism, a reliable, versatile tool that crews could depend on in any situation, anywhere in the world. These weren't just machines, they were the instruments through which nations projected power, defended territory, and ultimately determined victory or defeat. The crews who operated them, who lived beside them, maintained them, and risked their lives to keep them firing, knew these weapons not as statistics or technical specifications, but as trusted companions in humanity's greatest and most terrible conflict. Today, examples of all 5 survive in museums around the world, silent monuments to the men who built them, operated them, and all too often died beside them. They remind us that victory in war comes not from any single weapon, but from the combination of engineering brilliance, tactical innovation, industrial might, and above all, the courage of those who serve.